Should religion and politics mix?
So let's get to it, gentlemen. Should religion and politics mix? As always, we'll begin with this quick fire round of 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we'll pick up the conversation from there. So, Mr. Fleischer, please take the lead.
Thank you very much for having me on. I think that we are looking at an Israel that is more trying to be more like a France and an Australia, where you really feel the culture. You land in the place, you're like, oh, it's an Australian country, it's a French country, it's got the wine, the cuisine, and the songs and the music, and the, you know, or in America, you feel like it's Christmas. You're like, wow, I could really feel it in the streets. I could smell it in the stores. Here in Israel, we have Hanukkah. You're not exactly sure it's Hanukkah because it doesn't smell like Hanukkah. There's not a lot of lights of Hanukkah. A little bit here and there. We want to bring the culture back. We want every young person to know the 12 months of the year, the Jewish months of the year. We want basic fundamental love of our authentic Israeli culture and not a secular coercion to get rid of these things and get rid of the Bible as a kind of underneath it pillar of Israel.
Yes, we'll put a stop right there and obviously unpack it further in a split second. Lawmaker Cassif, your take, please.
Yes, of course, I support total distinction, a separation between church and state or between religion and state for a very simple reason. It is a matter of a private matter of each and every one of us. Each and every one of us is entitled to live according to one's own beliefs. And any kind of religious induction into politics and the state rules involves coercion. And I am against coercion, secular coercion or religious coercion. In that sense, the state must be neutral.
Okay, Mr. Schulman, last but not least, your thoughts?
Okay, well, I don't agree with either of them. The reality is I believe that this is a Jewish state and it has Jewish cultural values, but I'm not particularly interested in Jewish religious values as part of determining what my daily life is all about. There needs to be a clear separation between religion and state. I don't think, Judaism is not, or Israel and Jews are not just a religion, they're also a peoplehood.
Right.
I'm a strong believer in the Jewish peoplehood, its history, all that comes with it, and the state should reflect that. But it should not reflect religious views of ultra-Orthodox rabbis who are coming so far from my set of values and beliefs that I certainly don't want them involved in my day-to-day life.
Okay, and on that note, gentlemen, please feel free to interact from this point onwards. And let me begin by asking the following, and Lawmaker Cassif, if you may be the first one to answer. Is liberalism a form of religion?
Absolutely not. Of course, each and every ideology may be turned into a religion if people use the specific ideology or philosophy they believe in to coerce and to justify one's beliefs. But it's not necessarily so. Liberalism, basically, and not only the so-called, not only the topical one, but if we go back to the beginning, to the ideological or philosophical separation between state and church, between politics and religion, the beginning is more or less with some liberal philosophers like John Locke, John Stuart Mill, and others. Each and one of them gave us a different justification, philosophical justification, moral justification.
Yes, but Mr. Cassif, Marx did not intend for communism to become the Soviet Union. At the beginning, philosophical theories are not what they become. The question is, has liberalism become a religion?
No, absolutely not.
I would not say it's become a religion. I mean, the reality is liberalism just means that we do not want other
Gentlemen, it's difficult to hear the both of you together. Mr. Cassif, please conclude your remarks, and then we will hear Mr. Schulman, please.
Some people do refer or treat liberalism as if it was a kind of religion. But as I said before, I am against any kind of coercion. Yeah. In order to prevent coercion, in that sense that we're talking about, the state must be neutral. That means that it must cling to democratic basis. And of course, it cannot absorb or endorse any kind of philosophy, ideology, including religion. Religious people should enjoy not only their own rights of worship,
Right.
but also respect.
Right, but
their respect should not be at the expense of the respect for those who are not religious.
Yes, but Marc Schulman, what Mr. Cassif claims to be neutral policies is not neutral for the other side of the divide, for example.
Well, it's not neutral for the other side of the divide, because the other side of the divide has been trying, with greater or less success over the whole history of the state to impose their values on the rest of the state. Now, Ben-Gurion made certain compromises.
So.
He thought they would disappear. Obviously, they have not disappeared. But the reality is liberalism means exactly what it stands for, is that a government should not impose its views on the people. We should be liberal and allow people to decide, up to following certain laws and everything else of that nature. A liberal belief is not a belief that's anti-religious or pro-religious or anti-anything. A liberal belief just means that
Mr. Schulman, until not so long ago, we had a health minister, Nitzan Horowitz, who promoted LGBTQ reforms in the health ministry, the respective ministry he headed. Some would suggest that these reforms are not neutral. I'm not taking a stand, obviously.
But he didn't make anyone become LGBT. He just provided services to people who he believed were underserved. So, that's not being activist in that sense. He wasn't saying, well, let's convert everybody to be LGBT or whatever it might be. He provided services, additional services that were not being provided.
I think that's quite naive to say it that way, since there's education. There's education towards that ideology.
As many people as it possibly can.
Yes, Mr. Fleischer, please.
I think it's naive to say that it's just providing services. I think that there's an agenda out there in the West and parts of Israel to force down the throats of religious people LGBT ideology, not just rights for those people, but the idea that value system should be educated in schools. I don't think people want that. I think a lot of Israelis really don't want that. And I think that it's important to realize that Israel is a liberal state on the one hand, and I think those values are important. But on the other hand, it's also a Jewish state, and it's a national state of the Jewish people. And so what I was talking about at the beginning was really things that continue that tradition and those feelings towards what it is to be a Jew, what is it to love our stories, what it is to love our Hanukkah, what is it to have basic knowledge of like our prayer books. Do we have that? So we recently had an effort to get rid of the Tanakh from education, from the Bible from education. We want Bible to be part of the education system.
Fake news. That was false. It
was not fake news. It was not fake news. It was very real news.
You quoted before. Sorry, I didn't get your name. Sorry,
Mr. Yishai Fleischer. Please.
No, I'm talking about the host. Sorry.
My name is Ellie. Pleasure, Mr. Cassif. Thank you for being on the show.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Look, you quoted before, the catastrophe that goes on in Iran, the executions, the persecution. What Mr. Fleischman wants is exactly that. We will not let them do that. Now, I would like to say another thing.
How absurd. Knesset member Cassif just made an excellent example of left-wing propaganda. How could you possibly say that a person like me would want an Iranian-style persecution? It's just absurdity. It's just an absurdity. You revealed yourself for being such a propagandist. How could you even say such a thing?
Laws to rule. It means that you are interested in a persecution of those who do not accept biblical laws. Now, I would like to say another thing.
Absolutely absurd, and to equate a Jewish love of the Bible to the Iranian persecution is just an absurdity. It reveals what kind of person.
Everybody should be allowed to pray at the Western
I'll be happy
Wall
if I can speak. May I speak? May I?
Please, Mr. Cassif.
Thank you. I personally, though that's not the subject now, so I just mentioned it for the record. I personally support a democratic state, which means by definition that it should be the state of its all citizenry and only of its all citizenry. So in that sense, I do not accept the gist of the definition of a Jewish state. But I put it aside. Let us assume for our conversation, for the sake of an argument, that we all support the idea of a Jewish state. Again, I reserve it, but I have my own reservations for this idea, but I put it aside. There is a debate as to what is the meaning of Judaism, of Jewishness. It reminds me that Ellen Dershowitz, who is far from being in my own political or philosophical views, wrote ages ago a very interesting book called The Vanishing Jew in America. And he says that he specifies there a story that happened to him when he approached his bar mitzvah. And he said, when I approached my bar mitzvah, I began to think, what is the meaning of being Jewish? I went to my father and asked him, what is the meaning of being Jewish? And he gave me one answer. Thereafter, I went to my mother. She gave me another answer.
Yeah.
And my grandfather and grandmother, etc., etc. In the end, he came back to his parents and said, look, my conclusion is that being Jewish means not to agree what is the meaning of being Jewish.
And I was with Mr. Dershowitz this week, and Alan Dershowitz told me, I was with Alan Dershowitz this week, and Dershowitz told me that last year he went to synagogue.
Mr. Fleischer, please speak. Yes, Mr. Cassif, your point has been made. Yes.
Mr. Cassif is mentioning Dershowitz, and Dershowitz told me personally last week that he was in synagogue last year for his 83rd birthday and was able to read the Torah portion of Mishpatim because he knows Judaism.
It is extremely difficult to hear both of you.
But the question of what Judaism is a really important question. Because I think most of us, quote unquote, liberals,
Mr. Cassif will speak ad nauseum. Can you?
Yes. Okay, gentlemen.
That's really the
one short
sentence,
please.
It's not a.
Yes.
One short sentence, please.
In the 10 seconds we have left, please, Mr. Cassif. Yes,
of course. I object I object any kind of enforcement and coercion.
Yes, a point made. Yes, we fully understand that.
I'm against religious, but I'm also against
Question being whether at the end of the day the elected representatives are simply executing what they promised to do. Similarly to Horowitz promoting LGBT reforms. Now Avi Maoz wants to promote his reforms. We will continue our debate right after the break, of course. So you are not going anywhere. Yishai Fleischer, Marc Schulman, and Ofer Cassif, thank you very much for this, and we will be back with part 2 of our summit right after the break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Mr. Marc Schulman, Mr. Yishai Fleischer, and lawmaker Mr. Ofer Cassif. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're also staying on topic, but we do want to try and expand the discussion to a more global one. Let's take a quick listen before we go back to the debate to some protesters in Indonesia. And if I wouldn't have mentioned their location, they might have, could have been sound from essentially anywhere else in the world. So let's take a listen and pick up the conversation from there.
The government should focus on fulfilling people's civil rights, the economy and culture, such as job, vaccines, healthcare, and so on, and they should have passed laws related to that. Instead, they passed a law that is not democratic, that controls our private lives, and does not take care of public matters. It is a setback for our country, which has fought to reform, and now we are moving backwards.
Although this law is made for the public, when we examine it closer, these laws can put people in jail instead. That's why we are promoting public awareness, that the public should know all of us can be charged under this law with the tiniest actions, and everything we do has high potential to be criminalized.
So let's get to it. Is the fight for or against religion local or a global one? We once again begin with this quick fire round of 30 seconds each, and then the conversation. Mr. Cassif, take the lead, please.
Yeah, everybody remembers that Karl Marx, and I'm a well-known socialist, said that religion is the opium of the masses. Now, I still think that's true, but that doesn't mean that I do not respect the right of people to worship. So again, as I said before, we have to analyze and to think what makes people in our times, in some places, more religious. And I think that the answer is based on a social and economic issue. I think that the class issue is the reason for people to retreat in some respects to the Middle Ages. And I think that the solution then is not only privatization of religion, but also to give a real answer to the obstacles and the difficulties on the economic issue.
Yes, well, some would suggest that the 20th century was the anomaly in this respect, that it was less religious than others and not a certain progression. But we will leave that to it. Mr. Fleischer, your thoughts, please.
I think that it is a global issue in the sense that there's a fight today between secular globalists, universalists versus nationalists who believe in conservative values, who believe in the family, who believe in the Bible, who believe that culture is an important part of the state, as opposed to places that have become completely secularized and forgotten, what it's all about. By the way, countries like the United States still have blue laws, and certainly when you come there, you can really experience, religion in a great way, like Christmas, the way they celebrate it. That's the way we want to have Hanukkah. We want to have fun. We want it to be an awesome spiritual experience that you can really feel in the streets culturally. Without, we're not trying to take away rights. We're trying to give people opportunity.
Please.
Okay, Marc Schulman, please.
Okay, I think it's a global phenomenon. It's one that we do not understand yet, to be honest with you. The greatest success in the world took place in the United States when it knew from the very beginning to separate religion and state.
Yeah.
Europe moved forward in the 20th century, in the 19th century, actually, when they also when they separated out religion and state. There seems to be a return to that. A lot of it is politically driven. A lot of that is yet to be fully understood, I'm afraid. I don't think we fully understand what the phenomenon took place. It seems a bit strange to me in an age when we understand so much more in terms of science that religion has managed to make a comeback in the ways that it has. But so much of it is political. Politicians cynically using religion in order to gain power.
But so on that point, let's begin our conversation again. Is ultra-conservatism is a reactionary or a balancing act, if you will, to uber progressiveness, to the woke movement, so to speak? Marc Schulman.
Look, I think you got to look at it in different ways. In terms of religion, look at Judaism. The Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox movement, was a response to modernity. The famous statement, anything new is no good, basically. Was one of the leading Haredi rabbis stated back in, I think, in the 16th century or 17th century. The reality is that was a response to modernism, and it remains that way. The attempt to get away from modernism in various forms to explain things with religion is a worldwide phenomenon. It's a phenomenon clearly within Judaism. I don't think it has anything to do with woke. I think woke is just this latest surge in the last 4 years. We're talking about woke. I'm not even sure what woke means.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's not
no, I don't think that anyone does.
It's the attempt to isolate.
Yeah, but Mr. Fleischer, I do want to ask you the following. Do you know one person who eats kosher because of laws, because of regulation, and not because he wants to eat kosher? Or in other words...
They're called soldiers. They're called soldiers. They're called the government workers, and they're called people in the hospitals. So to your answer, I guess millions of people eat kosher because of laws. So that was the answer to that one. And I wanted to just throw out a question to all my other panelists and our moderator. Who can name easily the 12 Hebrew months? The 12 months of the Jewish calendar. Does Ofer Cassif know the 12 months of the Hebrew calendar? Maybe he does, but I know that tons of Israelis, tons of Jews don't know it because we've had a secular coercion that has taken away basic. So what? So that means that we are lacking fundamental knowledge of what it is to be Jewish, and we want to propagate and promulgate the Jewish people, and that has always been through knowledge. That has always been through knowledge. And if you don't know the months, that means that you're not so much of a person who has Judaism in their life and in their heart, and that means that there's a weakness in our people, and we want to bring basics back to education.
Okay, Mr. Fleischer, please let Mr. Cassif reply, please.
Sure.
Yeah. First of all, as I said before in regard to the former discussion, who makes him or who gave Mr. Fleischman the monopoly over the definition and understanding of Judaism?
I didn't take I just asked you if you know the 12 months of Judaism.
Judaism may be experienced in many, many ways. And I think that's exactly the pluralism I support. I want each and every person...
Pluralism means ignorance in your language.
Either Jewish
Wait,
or
Mr. Fleischer, do you support the women of the walls, right? To go pray at the Western Wall, not even the Western Wall.
I have no problem with people praying at the wall of different kinds. I don't care about that.
I want each and every person who lives in the state of Israel to be free to decide by himself or herself how one wants to experience one's identity, either Jewish or not. That's not the business of the state. Now, if I focus only on those who consider themselves as Jews, that's their own right too. One may experience Judaism as Mr. Fleischman does. This is his own right. I do not oppose it. To some extent, of course, if one uses one's beliefs, religious or otherwise, to coerce others or to mock others or To exclude others, that's another issue. But assuming that that's not the case, each and every person, in our case, a Jew who lives in Israel, has one's right to experience one's own Judaism. And what
the question is, what is taught in the schools? That's Fleischer. Anyway, it's what's taught in the schools. And I want to answer the question that I keep getting asked about the kotel. I don't care who prays at the kotel.
You don't, Mr. Fleischer. Yes, Mr. Fleischer, you don't, but your elected representatives
do. It's up for debate. It's up for debate. I personally would make the kotel much bigger. There's the family kotel, and it doesn't bother me. On top of which, by the way, I want rights on the Temple Mount to pray fairly and equally. Speaking of religious coercion, we have a jihadist religious coercion that doesn't let us pray on the Temple Mount, right? Our state enforces jihad laws and not freedom of Jews to pray in their holiest place. And you're fighting about if women can pray here and there. I don't care if women pray at the Western Wall. It doesn't bother me. Put on tefillin. Do whatever you want. I don't care.
Than anything else since 1928. More issues and more violence by issues around the Temple Mount. We would to think of doing that because of what? To be able to pray there as opposed to praying at the
I see. So you want to uphold the jihad laws to keep our mouths shut. That's really liberal of you. You want to uphold the jihad laws that make us close our mouth on our holy spot. That's a great piece of liberalism you got there.
Risk management. I live in a country with a lot of risks.
That's not my view. Those risks. Most of the people
you want to reject basic freedoms based on a race. You want to limit Jews from praying in the temple.
We want to blow up our future.